So my name is Bruno. I'm one of the co-founders of Camera 101, and my role is mainly technology and implementation of our ideas, and that's about it. Yeah.
I'm Ricardo. I'm Bruno's brother. I'm also founder of the studio. Bruno is my partner, and I'm mostly on the production dash creative side. I'm the writer slash game designer. That's about it.
So can you guys talk about, for those who don't know, what is Those Who Remain? What's this game all about?
Those Remain. It's a psychological thriller. It's a scary game, but it's not the classic horror game with the monster chases and the jump scares. In fact, we tried to create a scary game without using jump scares. We have a creepy setting where the player is always feeling the danger. Yeah, he's always on edge. Because we have like two main mechanics here. One is that the player can't go into the dark. There are some shadow figures there that will attack and kill if the player goes there. So he always needs to find a light source to scare these creatures away. So everywhere if it's dark, the creatures are there. The player needs a flashlight, a lighter, a spotlight, anything that can clear a path through the dark. And then we have what we like to call like a mirror dimension. It's like a different reality. It's a bit like the Upside Down on Stranger Things. And the player has to travel through that different reality, and the actions that he does in one place affect the other. So we kind of built the puzzles and the situations that the player has to solve.
Worlds.
Around these two mechanics with light, the dark, and the different realities.
You guys have a really interesting way of, like, instead of having like invisible walls or like barriers, you have like these very eerie like figures with like these blue glowing eyes where like you don't go there, like you can't go there. I think that's an interesting way to like kind of contain the player in an environment rather than having like a wall or like a fence or like just an invisible something that they can't go through.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the main points. Yeah, we don't have invisible barriers. We do have the shadow figures here. Sometimes you can go through the dark if that's what you should be doing, but sometimes you don't.
Yeah, but it's very natural. It's like a very natural block that the player instantly knows, okay, I can't go there. I have to find a way. I have to find some light or a different path to proceed.
Now, can you guys kind of elaborate how you went ahead and made light a mechanic in your game? I mean, it's a pivotal mechanic. You always want to be in it. You always want to use it. You need it to progress forward.
The light mechanic was actually the first initial idea that we had. We thought about making a game that would be more focused on puzzles, but the original idea was that darkness itself was going to kill. So it's because of some supernatural reason. But then we made a prototype and it didn't quite work, and Bruno can explain why.
It's really hard to transmit to the player the edge of between the light and the shadow because of penumbras and all of that. Sometimes you are in the shadow, sometimes you're not, and it's kind of weird that you go just a little bit into the dark and suddenly you die. So yeah. It wasn't working, so we got the idea of, instead being the dark that kills you, it's in the dark that will kill you. That's how we came up with the idea of putting creatures or entities in the dark that the player can see, either the eyes or...
it actually grew into the story that we were outlining the draft back then, so it made a lot of sense to have these guys there. The story explains why. So it started really simple, and then we made a few tests. No, it's not working like this, let's try it like that, until we got what we have today.
Can you guys talk about like what inspirations you had for this game? Because when I was watching the gameplay and reading about it, I got a very Silent Hill vibe from it.
Yeah, the biggest inspirations are actually not from games, but from movies and TV shows. The town where the action takes place is very inspired on Twin Peaks. It's also a small American town that looks very calm and peaceful. Yeah, it's very innocent and happy. But then underneath that layer, there's a lot of dark stuff and secrets. So we tried to emulate that kind of weirdness in our town. There's also a bit of Stranger Things and The Upside Down. And there are a few references to some 80s movies like The Fog from John Carpenter. And of course, it's impossible not to mention Alan Wake and Silent Hill, obviously. But I would say the biggest inspirations were from shows, from TV shows.
You guys talk about your overall design process. Do you start with the game's concept and design, like the gameplay, the puzzles, and integrate the story around that? Or do you start with the story first and then integrate the puzzles around that?
That's a good question.
Yeah, we don't have like a well-defined process. It happens very naturally, but in this case, it all started with the concept of the lights. We didn't have a story yet. We had a few ideas that eventually changed, but we tried to write both things at the same time: the gameplay, the story, the levels, or else we end up having to adapt the story to the rules or the rules to the story, and the result is not the best. So we try to do both things kind of at the same time when possible.
I almost feel like your game is more of like a interactive film or story, more so than even like a video game, or it's like a cross between like a video game and like a film or a TV show. Like it meets the two together, where you're experiencing a story in an interactive way, but you're also like watching these characters develop and these mysteries being solved and introduced.
An interactive story is one thing. We do have gameplay. We have monsters, we have stuff to do and puzzles to solve. Although you won't reveal the player will find what's going on, and you may choose his own path on what he's gonna do. But yeah, I can see your point of view. Yeah, it could be.
We wanted to create a story, tell a story, but we wanted the player to be a part of that story. So we created, I wouldn't say branching, but the player has to make a few choices throughout his adventure that will affect the ending. It's more interesting, it's more immersive. The player feels the consequences of his choices.
His own choices, yeah.
Yeah, but I see your point. It's very movie inspired, so yeah.
The game story revolves around, or at least from what I saw, revolves a man having an affair with another woman, and he's going to break it off. Can you talk about the characters in the game and how you interact with them? Is there a lot of direct interaction, or is it a lot of like clues and audio logs and phone calls, stuff like that?
There are very direct interactions too.
And the story is more complicated than just a simple affair. Yeah.
Yeah. The main character, he's like again, he's not the classic video game hero. He's a guy that made a few bad choices. He's got flaws. We created him like this because we feel that he's
more human.
Yeah, he's more human. He's more the player can relate to a character that has flaws. And so when the game starts, the player is introduced to this guy. He's drinking. He's going to meet his lover. He's not the ideal person, but he can have his redemption if the player chooses to.
Can you give us an idea, like without giving too much stuff away, can you give us an idea of like the scale of the world and the different environments you'll experience? For example, like there was a really fun scene at the gas station where you're trying to figure out how to get into a car, and you go through a mysterious light, and then all of a sudden it's like you're underwater and everything's floating, and it's very disorienting and kind of creepy.
Yeah, that's the other world. That's the alternate dimension. It's there for a reason. It's not there just for gameplay reasons. And you do have to go into that weird version of our own world sometimes to perform certain tasks or to find certain clues, and then you come back and yeah, that's it. And the laws of gravity are different in that world. Everything is different. Sometimes they are upside down, like in Stranger Things. Sometimes it's not. Yeah.
It's like there's not a fixed rule for how things work in the other reality. Everything's a bit crazy there. So there's a logic to follow, but it's all very crazy in that other reality. But the player will have to constantly change between both in order to solve specific situations.
You talk about how you go about designing, because I always have great respect for designers and game developers who are making puzzles in their game, because I feel like they take weeks, sometimes months to design, and then people solve them in 15 minutes, and you're like, oh. Can you talk about that process and how you keep the player engaged with these mysteries and these items and things like that?
No, many of the puzzles or ideas that we had did not work. It works for us, but not for many people. So we did partner with some schools and technological schools that would play the game. Several students. How many students each time? Like 20 or something?
Between 10 to 20 students.
Yeah, they would play sections of the game, and we would find blocks and situations that were not very clear. Then we would fix them or remake them, and then test again with another group. And this was really precious, useful, and
yeah. There was one particular puzzle that we thought, yeah, it's obvious, but it wasn't. And then we added a clue, and we made a new test. Again, it wasn't clear, and then we inserted a newspaper mentioning how to solve that. Again, it wasn't obvious. And then we added a light,
a flashing light on the window,
a flashing light, and then it became clear. So most of the times we think it's exactly the opposite. We think it's clear, it's okay, it's very simple, but it's not. So we have to make a lot of tests. It was actually the first game that we did this kind of tests, and it's really precious.
I feel like, especially in the design phase, when you're making a game like a battle royale game, it's a lot easier to just make an island and say, everyone go kill each other. But when you're making a handcrafted narrative experience, it's a lot more harder, because you have to have these scripted segments and you have to keep it engaging and interesting, even though it's a semi-linear path.
Yeah, it's much easier to shoot things. That's true. But many people are not into that. So I guess we need to try to get those people to play our game.
Yeah, we basically try to create different mechanics. These two things with the light and the dark and the portals, so that it's not just an exploration game. The player actually has to do more, and so we try to introduce new things, new ways of thinking, new monsters after a bit, so that there's always something new to the player, as well as the story. The player is always learning a bit more of what happened in that town. So yeah, we have to make sure that the player is engaged. We don't have to make a very large game, but the story needs to be strong and engaging.
Well, you also mentioned that there are some certain decision-making points in the game that calls for branching paths, I guess, kind of like that. Like, are there multiple endings to your game without giving away too much, or is there just like one ending you get, after the story's over?
No, there's three different endings, and those endings depend on certain choices that you make through the game. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the good, the bad, and the horrible ending, which it's the coolest in my opinion.
Now, a lot of psychological horror games did very well in VR space. When you were developing this game or starting to develop it, did you guys consider VR, or is the game going to be on VR?
That's a very good question. When
We don't know yet.
Yeah, but when we first started creating the rules, we made sure that there was nothing that would be an impediment to make make a VR version like crouching or jumping. We made sure that we could keep the option open so that if we decided to, we could do it. Every time we go to a show, there's always a lot of guys asking, man, this game in VR, it would be awesome, please make it. So we don't know yet, but there's a possibility, I think. Yeah.
I mean, you only have so much time, money, and manpower. I mean, how big is your team?
Well, we are three people, and a big, I wouldn't say big, but a few freelancers.
Yeah, that's
Maybe we were, I don't know, with freelancers included, everyone making sometimes jobs here and there. Maybe we're up to, I don't know, 10, 11 people?
Yeah, around 10 probably. Yeah, but it's a small team.
What would you say is the hardest part in 2020 about being an indie game developer?
Visibility.
Yeah,
Visibility is a big problem.
and probably the amount of games that are released. The tools are so much easier nowadays. The stores are available, so it's very easy to make a game and sell it. But it's very easy for everyone. So, there's always a lot of games. So yeah, it's exactly what Bruno said: visibility.
Now, you're planning on a PC and a PS4 release, correct? Are you have any plans for Nintendo Switch?
It's gonna work, yeah. We have PC, Xbox, and PlayStation 4. And Nintendo is in the works. It should be
Somewhere in the summer, I think.
Somewhere in the summer.
What's it like seeing your game? Because obviously this is a project of passion. Come to kind of closer to release date as you squash bugs and tighten the bolts and get everything ready for a release. What's it like to feel that?
It's really good. After so long, it's really good. But at the same time, you've seen the game so many times, so many thousands of times. You just want it out.
I would say it's both exciting and intimidating. Because now it's finally gonna be in front of everyone. Of course, we have really good expectations, but it's gonna be out there in the public. So, but yeah, it feels really good. It's been a long project. It's our biggest project so far. So.
Is there any type of a lesson or kind of theme you're trying to get across with your game when people play it? It's don't have affairs with married men or something like that, anything like that. You might get sucked into another dimension.
No, there's no morality in the game.
Well, the thing here is that every character in the game, you can say that this person is good, this person is evil. Everything's kind of very gray areas. But the basic thing that we want to convey to the player is that every choice has a consequence, even small things or things that seem like small things. And that's basically it. We don't want to say you should do this or that, but it's it's a dark story. It addresses stuff like bullying, suicide, etc. So hopefully the story will make the player reflect about about these issues.
And I love asking this question to games, especially games that are story centric. If your show was a Netflix show, how many seasons would it be?
I never thought of that. I don't know. Depends if you drag it at all, or if you drag it. But
Actually, if it was an anthology series, like American Horror Story or so,
you could have a lot of content there.
yeah. I would say 4 seasons. three seasons is good.
Okay, so when does the game come out and what platforms will it be on?
So May 28th on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation 4. And retail on PlayStation probably
And
around
PC.
July. There was a problem with the distribution channels because of the COVID.
Yeah.
And yeah, so its retail is a bit later.
All right, well, in the meantime, where can they go to find more information about your game?
Awesome.
Thosewhoremain.com or our publisher, Wired Productions. You can also find it on the Xbox Store, Steam. I don't think the PlayStation Store is up yet. I think it's only on launch day.
And you can also find us on the social channels on Facebook and Twitter. Those remain.